The Nashville Predators hoped to make it 6 wins in a row this weekend. Yeah, that didn't happen. We're going to tell you why and share one growing concern we have on today's Locked On Predators podcast.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to this episode of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. We are a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off this Monday episode shouting out our Locked On Predators insiders and our everydayers who tune in each and every weekday to talk Nashville Predators hockey with us. We appreciate your support. We love getting through this season all together. I'm Ann Kimmel. I am a writer and co-host with Penalty Box Radio, and my friends, I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Emma Lingen, and I'm the Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
There was a saying once, and I don't remember what movie it came from, but it's the hope that'll kill you. And that just summarizes what's going on yet again with the Nashville Predators. They strung together 5 wins, but couldn't get it done Saturday night against the Anaheim Ducks. On today's show, we're going to recap that game. We're going to discuss the lineup decision that Andrew Brunette made that is receiving a little bit of criticism from the fan base. And friends, we got to talk about one potential area of growing concern, despite some better results for this team lately. Emma, a lot to dive into. Was really feeling good. Like, I felt like, oh, look at us recapping wins like, we used to in the good old days. Happy Monday, everyone. We lost 5-2 to the Ducks. Like, what is happening here?
Yeah, that's why I know we usually give our one word for each game. My one word is gravity, because this was the game that brought us back down to earth a little bit, I think, because
yes.
There was even the wins that they were getting, they weren't pretty wins, and it's like sooner or later the wins are going to dry up, and they did, because if you let a team score 3 unanswered on you in the third period, more often than not gonna win.
You're not winning that game. Yeah, this is a Nashville Predators team that is not, in the words of Alpha Bud, defying gravity. Zach LaRue has no idea what I'm talking about, but maybe some of you do. It's a wicked reference. My one word to describe this game is Long Island medium. Now, look, here's what's real about me. I'm not really into the medium thing. I have enough trouble talking to the living, not really interested in talking to the dead. But somehow this Teresa Caputo woman has ended up in my algorithm and in my reels. And okay, I found myself sucked in. And here is what happens when I catch a Long Island medium reel. It's like, sometimes I'm going to listen and I'm going to be like, this lady is legit. Like, she is talking to the dead. And then other times I'm listening and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so fake. Like, you're just saying what everybody would say. This is so fake. That is exactly how I feel about this Nashville Predators team. Like, on one day, I'm like, okay, this team is legit. Like, they can talk to the dead. They can win games. They're getting it together. And then we have a game like Saturday night, and I am like, you have gone through someone's trash and read their mail, and now you're giving them a reading from some dead guy. It's just shocking to me how I cannot nail down this team. And here's what's real, Emma. We spend a lot of time covering this team. I cannot tell if they are a legit Long Island medium or if they are a hoax. I don't know who they are.
Yeah, and that, I think that in itself is the problem. That should tell, if you don't know by now, then, and it's not just you. Trust me, anytime I've gone on TV or radio or whatever to, like, with any, out of market place to talk about the Nashville Predators, and, looking to me as the quote unquote expert, people are like, well, what's going on with the Predators? I'm like, I wish I could tell you. I have no idea, because this just, again, being the resident pessimist here, I tend to lean more towards they are a hoax because, again, I point to the wins that they did have. Again, 5 in a row, all good things. Wins over Vegas and Minnesota, that's legit.
Yeah.
But then you take Chicago to a shootout and you win 2 in a row over San Jose, but you also give up 10 goals to San Jose. So that's also not great. So I think that, when you get to Anaheim, who's only like ever so slightly above San Jose in the standings in the Pacific, that's where you're like, okay, I mean, sooner or later the luck is going to run out. Not saying it was all luck and that these teams haven't been doing things well. I mean, Nashville, again, the offense has been there, which is nice to see.
Yeah.
Because we were at first like, where is it? We're
Yeah.
supposed to get goals. Where are they? And, now you're seeing the offense. The defense remains questionable at best, I would say.
Yes.
We saw that. I mean, now 3 games in a row, they've given up 5 goals to the opponent. And they shockingly won 2 of those, but again, because the opponent was San Jose. No disrespect, but
Yeah.
you can't keep giving up 5 goals and expecting to win. That's not what happens.
That's not how hockey works in general. This is the part of the hoax. Like, hey, look at us win games, giving up 5 goals. Barry Trotz talked so much in the offseason about it's fantasy hockey and it's what's on paper, and we're going to figure it all out and what's real when we start playing hockey. Friends, we have been playing a lot of hockey and we still don't know what is real about this team. And like you say, Emma, that may tell you something right there. We always, of course, chat with our insiders during and after games and ask for their input. And we kind of go back and forth about what they're seeing and what we're seeing. Lee's one word for Saturday night's game was gassed. I think those high action San Jose games wore them out. Dustin's one word, this is so hilarious, is Dumb and Dumber. Remember when Lloyd spiked Harry's drink with Turbolax and messed up his date by giving him explosive diarrhea? That's what this Preds defensive unit has been doing to Saros and Annunen lately. Defensive diarrhea. Yeah, we're going to talk about goaltending coming up a little later in the show. Chris said if you give up 4+ goals, you're going to lose more often than not. Chris is exactly right. A bunch of our other insiders, Gene, Gayton, Macy, Tanner, a bunch of them, like kind of the overarching theme from all of our insider community is defense. Stop. Like defense optional. What are we doing? We did get goals in the game from Ryan O'Reilly and Gus Nyquist. It's great to see Gus Nyquist get a goal that's not an empty netter, which, look, I don't knock an empty netter. It's worth the same amount as one with a goaltender in there. And Nashville did go empty net early. They just under 5 minutes left. They went empty net. Preds didn't get one scored on them. Also didn't score one. So there's that. The dagger for me in this game, Emma, happened at the end of the first period. Less than 10 seconds to go. I think this was the one where Roman Josi just kind of didn't get the puck cleared and ended up with a goal by Mason McTavish. It was a great goal. It's a great play by the Ducks, but less than 10 seconds to go. And you give them that goal. And granted, more goals went on to be scored, but it felt like that was a little bit of a dagger, I think, for Nashville, because they had been doing that earlier in the season. And there we are again, seeing them give up these late period or early period goals. Y'all, it's maddening. Maddening.
Yeah, and that was an un-Yossi like turnover too. We don't see that a lot from him, but it was definitely, you could tell he was trying to make the play and just you could just see it happening almost in slow motion.
Yes.
You're like, that's a goal. That's a goal.
You know what's coming.
Yeah. So I would agree. That one stung a little bit.
Yeah. Again, the Predators fall 5-2 to the Anaheim Ducks. Coming up, we are going to take a look at the goals that Anaheim scored. And friends, we got to talk about something that is kind of a growing concern. We want to weigh out how concerned are we with this defense optional situation, and how concerned are we about Juuse Saros? If getting your finances in order is on your to-do list in 2025, you need to check out Rocket Money. Rocket Money is like having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all of the app's premium features. One of their best features is that subscription tracker. You can use it to cancel services you aren't using anymore or that you've forgotten about, and that can save you a ton. Plus, with their goals feature, you're able to automatically set aside money for the future. No more stressing about budgeting every month. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked on today. That's rocketmoney.com/locked on. rocketmoney.com/locked on. All right, Emma, kind of recapping this Anaheim game, but also putting it into some bigger context. Anaheim, usually not a high scoring team. They have the fewest total goals scored in the league. They put up 5 on the Nashville Predators and on Juuse Saros. And some of these goals kind of have people wondering, where is the issue? And again, I think when you're looking at this, this is a Zebras thing. I don't think it's a cut and dry thing, but you look at the first goal, it was kind of this anemic shot from a bad angle, but the puck kind of got caught up in Juuse Saros, who ended up in the net with the puck in the net. Again, we talked about that late first period goal that was just brutal. Couple rebound goals. And then they had a power play goal, cross ice backdoor pass for that 5th goal. How much of what you saw Saturday do you feel like rests on Juuse Saros in net? And how much do you feel like is, again, this problem that we've seen recently, even in wins, of the defense not playing well in front of him?
Yeah, this is where I get a little wary about talking about numbers with goaltenders because
Mhm.
they really don't tell the whole story, and there's so much, to do with eventually it falls on the goaltender if the opponent scores a goal. But what happened to lead up to that? Again, I'm not exonerating UC Saros of everything. I think, like, certainly he holds some accountability here, but I think that there's just been a lot of chatter about UC Saros lately about, oh, he's been looking really bad, as like, even I was a guest on the hot stove on NHL Network Radio this weekend, and that was one of the questions they asked me, was about, like, what's going on with UC Saros? Are you concerned, or is it more about the defense in front of him? And I said, well, I'm glad you phrased it that way, because I think it is
Yeah.
exactly more to do with the defense in front of him. Again, not absolving him of all blame. Like, there are definitely a few goals that he would like to have back. But
Mhm.
again, like, putting this all on Saros, you give up 10 goals to the San Jose Sharks. And that second game rather, in San Jose, that was Justus Onanen that gave up 5, in addition to the one that he gave up in the first game. So it's like, again, I think it's more indicative of the very poor defense that is being played in front of him. And again, one thing I feel like people are just so quick to forget, UC Saros typically not, he's typically a very slow starter in this league. With, he gets off to kind of sluggish starts. Well, this year, he didn't get off to a slow start. And now
Right.
we're kind of seeing a mid-season slump for him. And it's like, okay, I mean, I'm not saying I'm not saying that it's not a problem and doesn't need to be addressed at all, but I'm like, I think people are assigning too much blame for the Predators losing on him because, like, look, I will allow him this mid-season slump after the start that he had
Right.
because that was a much better start than we usually see from him. And I think that, again, so much about this season has not gone according to plan for Nashville. I just think it is low-hanging fruit to look at, oh, well, they allowed that many goals, blame the goalie. And it's like, all right, I mean, yes, he does share some of the blame, to be sure. But to me, just watching these games, the more glaring issue is the defense. It's not the goalie.
Mm-hmm. I like what you're saying about remembering that, Saros started very, very strong this season. And I think people are forgetting that. And it's easy to forget that when you look at the Nashville Predators record. But what you have to remember is that Saros kept Nashville in those early games. They weren't scoring offense. And the defense wasn't fantastic either. But UC Saros was doing UC Saros things early in the season. The team overall was not getting the results. So when you look at his win-loss record, it's appalling, as it is, just across the board for the Nashville Predators. But he was doing his part early. Nashville was just not giving him any goal support early.
Right. And I believe leads the league in losses right now. He has the most losses in the league. And I think that, again, you can't say none of that is on him. Sure it is. But I think that overall, again, I think it's more indicative of the way the team is playing. When they weren't, now, okay, great, the offense is showing up, but we can't forget about the defense. And again, it's not even just the defensemen, it's the defensive play of the forwards as well. It's just, it seems very, I don't know, like, again, a lot of what we talked about when the offense wasn't clicking, we talked about, oh, it's a chemistry thing. It needs to come with time. Like, they're still just building this chemistry. Well, there's chemistry that comes into play on defense as well. And I think that's been lacking. It seems like there's a lot of missed assignments, a lot of just kind of guys getting caught too low in the zone and not knowing where they're supposed to be at a certain time. And again, it's not an easy thing to point out and be like, oh, that's the problem. That needs to be fixed. It just seems kind of overall guys just not being sharp defensively. And it's starting to, again, now it's impacting your goaltender as well.
Yeah. There are a couple of the goals that concern me in the fact we've seen a couple where he hasn't corralled the puck and the puck's kind of gotten away from him in the net. Don't really love seeing those. They're not very typical of Saros. We've also seen the defensemen interfere with him making saves on goals. Brady Shea, Nick Blankenberg, Justin Barron.
Hard to make a save when your defenseman is sitting on top of you outside of the crease. Just say it.
Yeah. The one that surprised me was that backdoor cross ice pass on the power play goal, that fifth goal from Anaheim, because we see UC Saros make those saves so often because one of the most outstanding things about him in net is his lateral movement. And we haven't, like, that was one where I'm like, he shouldn't have to make that save, but we've seen Saros make those saves, and so there's a part of me that's like, is there maybe some sort of tweaking going on, like not an injury, but something going on? Andrew Brunette has talked about how much he likes Juuse Saros. So Juuse Saros has maybe gotten a couple more starts. We also have UC Saros playing in the Four Nations face-off. So it'll be interesting to see what his workload looks like going into that and coming out of that.
Yes, and can I also say, this is not cause for concern that Juuse Saros is getting more starts. We have been saying this for years, quite frankly, for the last at least 2 years, that UC Saros is being overused. He's being overused by the Nashville Predators. And it was the case when Kevin Lankinen was the backup as well. There is no reason that he needs to be starting 65 plus games a year. It's not sustainable. Now that they have locked him into this long-term contract, you want that contract to age well. So you start kind of, backing off a little bit, give the backup some of the starts, especially when your backup is Juuse Saros, and he's playing very well. So I think that people saying like, there's been a lot of, in my opinion, overreactions to like, oh, well, Onanen got the start against Vegas. That means that Andrew Brunette trusts him more. No, it doesn't. It means that you gotta there's so many factors at play. And I think it means that, again, you have a goaltender. You mentioned the Four Nations face off, which is very important. But also, in addition to that, just overall, over the next 8 years, you want this. I mean, you don't expect him to be in his prime 8 years from now, but you want the contract to age relatively well. And the way to do that is not by throwing him out there every night and overusing him.
Yes.
So I think that it's, again, now the same people have been saying, oh, like he's going to get hurt if they keep playing him this much. Now we're like, oh, well, now Andrew Brunette doesn't trust him. It's like, no,
because he's not playing as much. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, no, this is actually a very good thing.
Yeah. It's interesting too, because so much talk is coming up about that 8-year contract. And oh my gosh, Saros, he's got that contract locked in. My favorite are the ones that are like, now that he's got the contract, he's not trying. Okay, y'all, that's just not real. That's not real. But again, I come back to
I don't know if my eyes can roll far enough back into my head.
You have to roll all the way back to like Filip Forsberg eyes in the back of your head.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Even just the casual off-record conversations I have had with this man. I don't think there is a bone in his body that would allow him to do that.
Not a cell. There's not a cell in that Finnish goaltender that would allow that to happen. It would never cross his mind. But I'm with you about the contract because, of course, now people are like, oh my gosh, we just signed him to this 8-year contract and look at him. Friends, you got him for a very good price. Lots of teams would have paid him way more money than you're paying him. You have to have a goaltender if you want to be competitive and make a run. Ask Colorado, who just turned over their entire goaltending, because you have to have a goaltender if you want to make a run. And yes, it is an 8-year deal. 8 years is the price of doing business, friends. They are not expecting Juuse Saros to be peak Saros for 8 years. They know that they need him to be very, very good for, 4 or 5 seasons, and we'll see how they rotate on and how that goes. But there is a lot of rumblings about Juuse Saros coming up. We're going to talk about the lineup decision that may have impacted Saros's play as well in the Anaheim game. You, of course, hear us talking in this episode about our Locked On Predators insider community. This is a great group of friends. We chat with them after the podcast, before games, during games. Of course, check in after games. This is where we get a lot of our topic ideas and questions from. We absolutely love hanging out and talking Nashville Predators hockey with our insiders. If you are interested in joining our insider community via subtext, you can find a link in this video description, and you can find a link in our bio. Emma, another decision made in the Anaheim game that I think was receiving a lot of backlash was that Andrew Brunette went 11 forwards and 7 defensemen. And I saw some people online that were like, why would you do that? This team is going offensively, and now you have messed up the chemistry on these forward lines. But I do think it made some sense, because you have had Spencer Stastny sitting out for a while. We've talked about the defense optional portion of the Nashville Predators play in recent games. You have to get him back in skating. And so I think that this decision was more about the 7 defensemen than it was about benching Vinny Hinostroza. That's my take on it. How did you feel like maybe that decision impacted the game?
Well, I do find it funny, the whole, oh, you're going to mess up the chemistry now. The two guys who scored for Nashville are the two guys on the line with a missing line mate. So
Yeah.
I thought that was funny. It was
Yeah.
Hinostroza sat out.
Mhm.
He had been playing with Nyquist and O'Reilly. Those are the two guys who scored. Again, I'm not saying it's because, like Hinostroza's out. Now they can actually play well and score. That's not what I'm
Right.
saying. But I think that, again, the 7 defenseman thing, I mean, it could be in a way sort of related to the whole when you don't have an assigned partner on
Mhm.
defense, or you don't have like the standard 12 and 6. I think it's a little bit of like, when your defense is already not doing great, like, and then you add in this new element, it's like, oh no, where do I go? What do I do? I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know who my partner is. Again, these are professional athletes. I don't mean to imply that they are that
Right.
discombobulated out there, but that's an exaggeration, I think, of like, it does change things. I mean, if you ask any of them, they'll say, "No, we play our game no matter what," but it makes a difference. So,
Mhm.
I think I agree with you, though. I was glad to see Stastny back in there. I would have preferred to see Stastny in and Barron out, and you keep Hinostroza in the lineup, but you know what? Baby steps, we'll take it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that, and I do think you've gotta get Spencer Stastny back in, and I know that he has not played as much hockey as most of these other guys, I understand that, but you've got a defenseman who has an elite skill set that, quite frankly, none of your other defensemen have. And that is no disrespect. I think you and I can both agree that we have been really pleased with what we've seen from Wilsby and Blankenberg. They've been kind of the surprise bright spots in an otherwise depressing defensive situation for Nashville. But Spencer Stastny has that elite speed, and you don't really have somebody else, Roman Yossi, but he's just Roman Yossi. He has elite everything. So you want to get him back in because that is a dimension that you need defensively. And look, some of the goals that San Jose scored and that Anaheim scored were generated based on speed. So you've got to get some defensemen out there that can keep up and interrupt that kind of thing as well. Nashville has to do something about the defense. Jeremy Lauzon has been skating off and on with the team. When we look at the injury report for the Nashville Predators, that is a player I'm like, for the love, Jeremy, please come back. Like, how big of a difference do you think it's going to make to get Lauzon back in the lineup?
Well, I think on one hand, on the negative side, I think we might be seeing the team penalty minutes start creeping back up there again.
Well, there's
But
that.
there's that. But on the positive side, though, I think that he is kind of underrated in the stability that he provides to the back end. He's not an offensive defenseman, but you don't really need him to be. He's just kind of a stabilizing force there. Yes, he has been racking up the penalty minutes, but for the most part, he doesn't make a lot of like undisciplined plays. I think
Right.
that if you look at the Predators defense right now, like, they could really use his size and his
Yeah.
stability, his physicality, because again, if you're talking about using Anaheim as an example, a lot of their plays, their chances were generated based on speed. Okay, yes, but then if you counter speed with speed, it's only gets you so far. I think you do need someone back there who can kind of like push him around a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah.
And right now, the only guy you have who's doing that is Luke Shen. So I think it'll be good to get Jeremy Lauzon back in just for a more like balanced defense, I think.
Yeah. The other player that I am itching to see back in the lineup, and we can dive into this more in detail maybe later on this week, Luke Evangelista. Because, we talked about going 11 forward, 7 defensemen, and Hinostroza was a healthy scratch. And look, can't complain about Vinny Hinostroza. I don't feel like he's done anything egregious. And, I think he's done very well. But Tommy Novak, Luke Evangelista have great chemistry. We've got Fedor Svechkov and Tommy Novak working very well. And I wonder if maybe, and we did see some minutes where Zach LaRue popped up with Ryan O'Reilly and Gus Nyquist against Anaheim. So adding Luke Evangelista back in, I think, is going to make some shifts offensively that Andrew Brunette's going to need to take a pretty significant look at to know, not just for this season, but Barry Trotz needs to know going forward where everybody fits in. And Luke Evangelista is a part of going forward.
Yeah, I think if you get Evangelista back in, you put him on that third line with Svechkov and Novak. You move LaRue back up to that second line with Nyquist and O'Reilly, because that line was doing well too. They're doing good things. And I just think that, yeah, you need to see what you have there. And obviously, if you say you're itching, I know Luke is itching.
Oh my gosh. Can you imagine how unpleasant he is right now?
He's been there. We've seen him in the locker room, and he's just kind of like, it's kind of funny. You can see him just kind of hovering, like, "Hey guys, what are we doing? What are we talking about?" Like, you can tell he just wants to be back in so
He's
badly.
ready.
Yeah, he's ready. I mean, he mentally, we don't know where he's at physically. He has not been skating with the team yet, but has been, can at least confirm that he's walking around. He's not in a boot or cast or anything like that. So whatever this lower body injury is, we know it's, not keeping him from walking normally. But yeah, I think that sometimes even just like the mere fact of him being back in the lineup will just kind of create a spark, as it is with any kind of, anytime you get a guy who's been out for a while who comes back in, especially as I mentioned, that third line with Novak and Svechkov. Svechkov's been looking really good.
My goodness.
Novak's been looking good. I would like to see what those guys can do together.
Yeah, I think it would be great. Mark Jankowski scheduled to return maybe later this week, but of course we don't have any confirmation on that. That's just sort of the speculation on that, out with an upper body injury. Going to pivot real quick before we wrap up this episode, Emma. Holy weekend, 3-way trade Batman.
Oh my gosh.
On a Friday night, y'all, on a Friday night, Colorado traded, I can't even believe I'm saying this, Mikko Rantanen to Carolina. Huge 3-way deal. Lots of moving parts in this. Colorado got Jack Drury, Martin Necas, a second round 2025 pick, a fourth round 2026 pick. Carolina got Mikko freaking Rantanen, Taylor Hall, and then a Chicago forward prospect. Chicago just hanging around here, got a third round pick in 2025 and 50% of Rantanen's salary. Okay.
Yeah. I mean,
what is your thought on this? Like, when you heard this, what was kind of just your initial thought about this move?
Well, I have a lot of thoughts. I think that at first, the details of the trade kind of came trickling in. So the first thing that I saw, the first part of the trade that I saw, was that Carolina was getting Taylor Hall. And I was like, okay, that makes sense, because his contract is up after this year. He's a veteran guy, has, a lot of playoff experience. He is the textbook rental, short-term rental.
Yes.
And so I'm like, all right, that makes sense for a team that's trying to go for it. And then it's like, well, Mikko Rantanen's traded. And I was like, oh. And then they're like, Rantanen's going to Carolina. Oh, wait, so it's Rantanen instead of Taylor Hall? No, it's both of them. They're both going to Carolina. And I think, Mikko Rantanen, his contract was going to be up after this year. They would have had until July 1st to negotiate an extension or let him walk in free agency. This was one of those tough situations where you knew he was going to be demanding and earning a hefty contract. But if Colorado has sort of set their quote unquote like internal salary cap at Nathan MacKinnon, they probably weren't going to be able to afford to keep Rantanen at what was likely going to be his asking price. So we always knew, or at least, I always knew it was a possibility they trade him. It wasn't a guarantee that he would stay or that they would negotiate an extension. So you knew trade was always a possibility. this came way earlier than I
Yes.
think anyone was expecting. No one expected it to happen this quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And then the fact that, I don't know, quite honestly, now a lot of this, and we talk about this a lot, we don't know like who the real winners of the trade are until probably like a couple years from now. But Rantanen, again, on an expiring contract, there was not an extension in place as part of the trade. So right now, Carolina is only guaranteed to have him through the end of this year. If he doesn't sign an extension to stay in Carolina, then I think Colorado absolutely fleeced them on this deal.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, Rantanen is by far the better roster player of everyone involved here, but you get him for the rest of the year, Hall for the rest of the year, but Hall's probably not re-signing. And then you get Martin Necas and Jack Drury.
Huge. Yeah.
Drury is one of their most exciting young players. And then you've got Necas, obviously has just, said, I'll take your short-term bridge deal and raise you the best season of my career, and
Yes.
then try to pay me now, Eric Tulsky. And so I think that, now you're at least getting an extra year of Necas. But I think that I'm still kind of processing it. I think there are a lot of parts there, but it's very interesting. Like bold strategy by Carolina, and this is really them going, all in.
All in.
Really
Yeah.
all in. Again, Necas probably a guy that they probably wouldn't have been able to afford to keep long term if he does keep, producing at the rate that he is, but still, it all happened a lot faster than I think anyone was expecting.
There's a lot of meat on the bone with that deal. And I
Yeah.
agree with you. It's going to be really interesting to watch how this pans out short term and long term for the players, for their contracts, for these two teams. And Chicago, God bless Chicago. They're like Bach hanging out nearby.
I will say, normally in 3-team deals like this, where one team sort of serves as the broker who retains salary on, just to make it happen. Normally what they get in terms of like a draft pick, it's usually a 4th or 5th. Now, the fact that they got a 3rd, I'm like, that's pretty good for Chicago. I'm just saying. And again, they lose Taylor Hall, who they weren't bringing back after this year. This is not a playoff team in Chicago. So, and again, you get the 50% of the contract. Fine, add it to your cap. It's gone by the end of this year. So it's really not like
doesn't cost them anything in the short term at all.
No. So I think Chicago fares pretty well with this, honestly.
Yeah. So interesting. Of course, then Kevin Weeks, ooh, you little pot stirrer, just tweets out a picture of the Pittsburgh skyline. And we hear that this Rantanen deal wasn't the wildest thing that they were hearing. We're just going to have to sit and wait and see what that means. I hope it doesn't mean Sidney Crosby's going to be a Nashville Predator, y'all. But wow, it was a wild weekend of Twitter refreshing for those of us who cover hockey, because we were like, what is happening in the world today?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Sidney Crosby is not getting traded, people.
Can you imagine?
It's not happening. He has no move clause. Nothing's happening unless he agrees to it, and he has said he wants to be a Penguin for life. It's not going to happen. I think that we're going to see some pretty significant shakeups in Pittsburgh based on everything we've heard with a lot of their other veterans, guys like Erik Karlsson, maybe even Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang. Like they are in need of a pretty big shakeup. So I think we will be seeing that, but may not be till closer to the deadline.
Let me just tell you, as somebody who lived in Pittsburgh, you go ahead and you trade Sidney Crosby, Penguins, and you watch and see what happens in that city, because they will not. Like, you can lay out X, Y, and Z about why it's the best thing. They will burn the city. It will be like Gotham, you all. It will be insane if they did that. But it was just a wild weekend, a little taste of things to come before the trade deadline at the beginning of March. And fortunately, this time we just got to sit and watch it. Speaking of sitting and watching, we have a couple days that we get to sit and not watch, because the Nashville Predators do not play again until Wednesday. They play the Vancouver Canucks later on in the week. Of course, we're going to have that game preview. We're going to take a look at Kiefer Sherwood and Kevin Lankinen, our life coach, Kevin Lankinen, and how everything is going for them individually. And whoa, what wild things are happening in Vancouver. We're also going to talk some more about Luke Evangelista returning to the lineup and what that would mean. So lots of great things coming up this week on the podcast. So make sure you stay tuned in. Before we log off on this Monday, Emma, let everyone know where they can find you and your work.
You can find me on social media at Emma_Lingen, and you can find my work at the Hockey News.
You can find me on social media at AnnK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work with Penalty Box Radio as well. That's going to do it for this Monday edition of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thanks so much for making us your first listen of the day. We will be back tomorrow with an all new episode. We'll see you then.